Mike Knott.
Hello, Robbie. How are we doing today?
Oh, plugging away at it. Homebound, not homeward bound, homebound.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here. I poured myself a nice bottle of red wine here, some of our homebrew hooch. Enjoying the day. It's beautiful here today. It's about 30 Celsius. It's pretty cooking hot. We went out on the bike earlier today. It's just a borderline, kind of almost too warm. We took a ride up towards the lake, and which is a good idea on a day like today. So it's about 10 Celsius cooler there. Almost perfect.
Good.
But so I poured a bottle of red wine today because by kind of popular demand, we've had some people ask us to kind of go through some of the itineraries of some of our tours. And one we thought we could talk about today was the Sicilian Sojourn. And so I thought red wine was appropriate for our travels, our virtual travel through and into Sicily.
I agree with that, Mike. I definitely agree with that. That's one of the wonderful things about Italy are all of the wines that are available. And if you're not a fan of red wine after you go to Italy and spend some time there, you will become one.
Yeah, and they're widely available for the outrageous price of about €5. Crazy.
Exactly. It's a considerable mission to try to find a bad $10 bottle of wine there.
Yeah. That's kind of your mission in life. Here's what I'm going to attempt to find. So when you started touring, or the tour to Sicily in 2012, I think.
That's right.
What made you, what attracted you to that area?
Well, one of the issues that we have with European touring, of course, is the fact that the season is somewhat limited by weather. Very simply, they have real winters there. And those real winters happen to stick around until April and sometimes late May. So the Alps are often impassable, regularly impassable in April, and often impassable in May. Most of the major mountain passes have kind of thrown a date out of around June 1st where they try to be open. So we can't get in the areas that we're traveling with the bulk of our tours until early June. And
especially, I guess, reliably so. Not that you can't, but to book a tour or an itinerary and say, yes, we're definitely heading there, you just can't count on it.
Yeah, absolutely can't count on it. Yes. And that then becomes a great big problem if you happen to have a particular this pass, that pass, or the other passes, things that you really, really want to hit, and they're closed, which is likely that early. So we schedule our Alpine tours during a time when the passes are generally open. That means we've got to look somewhere else to go touring. That's further south. That puts us into Croatia, into the Balkans, into southern Italy, Sicily, possibly over into Spain. But I don't know Spain well, and it's a little too far from Munich, so it is not convenient for us. Whereas southern Italy is quite convenient for us, and it's an area that we know reasonably well. So, bang. Sicily was a place to go check out. The interesting thing is the first trip we did there was a fall tour. It was in October. It was our scouting trip, and I have to say that I wasn't very impressed. I truly wasn't. I was disappointed with a lot of the scenery. The riding was interesting, but the scenery I wasn't particularly impressed with. And the reason for it is that Sicily is warm enough. I mean, if you look, it's quite close to Africa.
Yeah, it's pretty far south, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's quite close to Africa. It's in a very warm place in the summertime, and it turns into California brown late in the summer and the fall. It's not a particularly pretty place at that time. So Gretchen and I were fascinated with some of the places we stayed and disappointed, and some of the places we rode. Some of the rides were absolutely great. But we were not overall impressed with the trip. However, we had another tour of Sicily scheduled for the next spring and people on it. So off we went in the springtime and discovered an entirely different place that was green and pretty. And the roads were just as good as we had remembered them, but the scenery changed so much that it was really a delight to be there. We've been back now 3 times total, and are starting to really, really get a handle on the good roads there, and some of the tourist attractions are just incredible. And the nice thing is that there's very little traffic. Once you get inland particularly, there's very, very little traffic. The roads are interesting at times, but it's a really neat place to travel.
So it's interesting, that kind of point, in that when we're talking about the alpine regions, they certainly have their climates wherein you can't ride there, like we're just talking about. I suppose it's similar with Sicily, being that far south. You don't want to go there July, August, I would imagine. It would be too hot.
Exactly. Yep. Stoking hot. And again, you're back into the California brown at that point. Everything is starting to dry up. The springtime is the absolute time to be in Sicily. Hence, we're kicking off our 2021 season with the Sicilian Sojourn.
Actually, it seems to be my favorite time to tour wherever we be, because of the spring runoff and everything. When you're in the Swiss mountains, the snow melt that's coming down, and you have the waterfalls that go over top the roads and things like that. I just love that. I think it's one of my favorite times for sure.
Yep.
So you started the tour in 2012. What goes into creating a new tour? I'd imagine there's a ton of legwork, because you're creating a 2-week itinerary to a place you, I guess, have not been to before. So you're doing you're somewhat doing it virtually.
So there's a lot of virtual research, yes. Finding the good motorcycle roads it's always very helpful to have a local, and we got in touch with a couple of people from Sicily and had them give us some recommendations on roads. One of the interesting bits is that perspective is very different depending on what you've grown up with. Mm-hmm. And we were off, Gretchen and I were alone on a particular day on that first tour, and came around a corner, and the road was very significantly disturbed from an earthquake. I'm talking about levels that were 4.5 feet different between over there and here. And not a sign anywhere. There was not a single sign that said road out. And we stopped and we looked at this. And actually, if you're on the website, bmca.com, and you end up with a page that doesn't load properly, you end up getting our error page, which shows that particular section of road when we came up to it. So it says road ends here. And our local guide forgot to mention that to us. But the reason he forgot to mention it is because as we stood there and looked, there was a little path that went up through the field and went 150 feet around this very impassable section of pavement and got back on the road, and off we went. But that taught me to be really careful, because that wasn't the only time we ran into some really significantly surprising stuff in Sicily on the roads, where you'd be riding along and there would be literally a 8 or 10 inch drop off because the roads had shifted. Huge sections of land there move about incredibly. You'll see the side of a hill, and it's basically not slid down like a mudslide, because it moves much slower and much thicker. But you'll realize that, gee, that whole hillside came down and across the road here, and people are driving over it regularly. So it's something that's just so common. So the riding in Sicily is excellent. The roads are very enjoyable, but you really have to be on the ball. You have to expect something around every corner, because you'll find it. Big surprises sometimes.
I love that over there, a situation like you're just describing. In North America, of course, the road would be closed and gates and signs, and oh my God, you can't burst. And if your children look at the sign, they'll sure to die. But over there, there's not a sign, there's not anything. Just pay attention, figure it out, or like you said, if there's a little path that they can make work to go around, if your vehicle fit, away you go. I love that.
Yep, it's a far more practical way of dealing with things, and I'm sure that when you get into the backcountry in Canada and the backcountry in the States, you find stuff like that too.
Well, that certainly taught me from going on some of the tours to not necessarily just turn around. We come across some road construction one time. We were on our dirt bikes and there was road closed. So I went up to one of the construction workers and said, is it okay if we rode through? They're replacing a culvert. It was replaced. There was gravel down. It was no big deal. And to go to where we want to be on the detour was a fairly big detour. So can we just go across this? The guy asked the other guy, so, okay, well, yeah, I guess you can go across here, but just watch the pavement drops off. Well, we're on practically motocross bikes. The pavement dropped off 6 inches. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I'll watch that.
Yeah, well, that 6-inch drop in Sicily has got no markings, and that's okay when you're on the high side going off to the low side.
Yeah, yeah.
So fortunately, each and every one of those that I encountered was that, but it's definitely a place to pay attention.
So a top tip for anyone coming on the Sicilian Sojourn is be careful of that, or you're buying a front rim.
Yeah, and practice your braking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that one was big enough. I ran into a couple that were actually way more than front rim benders. They really were. If you were coming the other way at speed, it would be a very, very serious issue.
So let's talk about the itinerary. Why don't you walk us through it here a bit? 1,000 words or less. Why don't you tell us where we're going and what we're doing?
Well, hey, we kick off in Rome. So international flights in and out of Rome. Easy airport to get to from most any place. We don't spend any time at all in Rome. If you're interested in enjoying the city, and there is certainly an awful lot to see in Rome, you should get there a couple of days earlier and do that off motorcycle and outside of the tour. Our arrival in Rome is capped that first day with dinner, a group dinner, where we get together and talk about what's happening the next day. And next morning, we're on the bikes and moving right away.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah, because normally it's the first day is just stick around your original city. Exactly.
Well, what's happening on our second day there and our first day of riding is we're actually taking an overnight ferry to Sicily. Okay. So we've got the possibility for shorter rides or longer rides from Rome to the ferry docks. You can get there in an hour if you go direct. So if you're suffering a little bit from jet lag or whatever, you can make it a very, very short trip and have plenty of time to relax and hang out by the ferry docks, or take a longer ride if you're interested before we all meet at the ferry dock and hop on the ferry and then have an overnight trip to Palermo. So we sail out of Civitavecchia, and we're departing normally around 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. We're boarding long before that, but we're departing normally about 10 p.m. and arriving at 6:30 or 7 a.m. Palermo is a amazing, crazy, you've got to be kidding me city. It really and truly is.
In what way? What do you mean?
Well, it's a settlement that was founded by seafarers almost 3,000 years ago. And the Polynesians who originally settled there used it as a trading post, and they were coming from Lebanon. And 500 years later, in 250 BC, it was conquered by the Romans, who spent 700 years basically not putting a whole lot back into it, but
so kind of like Puerto Rico in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And then there were a few hundred years where the Ostrogoths were there, and Byzantines, and a couple of hundred years of Arabs. In 1072, the Normans came. And the Normans being Vikings who had temporarily lived in France. So that's just a little less than 1,000 years ago, after all the rest of those people. It really is a remarkable city with all of that history because it's lived in, and it's really hard lived in, too. It's not the prettiest city in the world by any means. It's busy, it's real, a lot of outdoor markets that are not tourist markets at all. It's a very real city. And Palermo is not the kind of place that I would want to go stay for 4 or 5 days at all, because it's not an attractive city, but it's a remarkable place. We have a couple of routes out of town when we depart Palermo, one of which is across town to the south. And it's only 2.5 miles. The likelihood of you making that 2.5 mile ride in anything less than half an hour to 45 minutes is about zero. Because the place is absolute mayhem with traffic. It's more mayhem than Rome. It's more mayhem than Florence. It's more mayhem than if all the Florentinians were in Rome at the same time that all the Romans were in Rome. And it's hilarious. The 2 times that I've made that particular trip, it hasn't been overwhelmingly comfortable because it was a little warm, but I was prepared for it and prepared everybody in the group for it. So you're riding through traffic that is coming at you on all sides from each and every way, through intersections that you're not even paying attention to the stoplights on. And all of this is, if there's room, you move into it. And if you leave room, someone will move into it. It's that simple, regardless from what side they're coming from. Now, all of this is going on, and not for a second do I feel threatened or under pressure or that there's somebody hostile around me, nor is there any horns beeping or anything else. Once you've made it across Palermo, you've got stories to tell. You actually haven't risked your life or anything. It's not crazy. It's just
it's a fact of life. This is
exactly. It's a fact of life.
I brought up the map of it on my iPad here, and I'm looking at the town, and I see what you mean in that. Apparently, there's no word in Sicilian for grid because it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of streets that parallel another street. They go off in all these funky angles and everything. It kind of looks like the top of an Oreo cookie or the Mayan calendar.
Yep, a little bit. And yet it's fairly level. So you're not up and down all kinds of hills and things. But anyway, the traffic's crazy, but it's not aggressive crazy. It's just there. And nobody's moving fast, believe me.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to practice your slow speed riding. Then from there, we're out in the countryside, and it's just remarkable how quickly things change. Once you get off of the main roads in Sicily, it's delightful riding. Really neat stuff. So Palermo's an interesting place to visit. It's one that you won't forget at all, and it's one that you might not hurry back to. You know, if the ferry docks somewhere else, we might kind of go around it and find a high point and look down at it. There are cultural attractions there, but they haven't been well taken care of. Sicily is poor. Southern Italy is poor, incredibly poor.
Oh, really?
In the late 19th and early 20th century, almost half the population of Italy left. And many of them came to North America, but they emigrated because there was no work, people were starving, and bang, they just left. So you've got magnificent towns with half the population that was there in 1910, and even in as late as 1950 and 60, there were still lots of Italians emigrating from there.
So do you think a majority of the people came from areas like that? Maybe it's tougher farming or something, because if you can't work, you can't grow your own food. You got to do something.
Right. Of course, with the end of the Second War, the Americas sort of opened up to Sicilians. There were a whole lot of them that came over after the Second War. Yeah, it changed things considerably there. But it's a relatively poor area. So once we get out in the countryside, we're not going from one prosperous farming town to another, bang, 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 bang. It's quite the contrary. It's very, very rural and nice riding. Once you get away from the coast, there's just nobody out there. Our next stop is Marsala on the west coast, and Marsala is known for two things. Wine. There is a wine that is made there that I don't like much at all. It's way too sweet for me. And there also are salt pans, and they've been harvesting sea salt for 2,700 years there, and you can still visit the salt pans, and it's a fascinating place to see how they're actually harvesting via evaporation the salt, which was so incredibly valuable in ancient times. And then we scoot around the bottom side of the island to Agrigento, and in Agrigento we are looking at the Valley of the Temples, where there are very, very significant ancient Greek temples. There are some 8 temples still standing, and a couple of them are in really good condition. I'm not much on ruins. They're interesting sort of sometimes, but I'm not really a great fan of old archaeological places generally. And this is a place that is pretty spectacular when you look at the size of the installation and the different temples that are still there. It was obviously a place that was very, very rich, was passed by many sailors, which is why they were put up on the hills so that they could be seen from the sea. Really a neat and interesting place. From there, we continue on to the east to the Baroque town of Ragusa. And Ragusa is a hilltop town that is filled with warrens of little alleys and buildings stacked up on top of one another. It was destroyed in the 15th century by an earthquake, and largely rebuilt from there. There was quite a bit of money. It was a prosperous place. And they rebuilt it after the earthquake. And that's the architecture that we get to look at now. And it really is neat.
I'm just looking at a couple of pictures from the Agrigento. I'm looking at some pictures of the ruins. They look pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, they actually are. They actually are. And it's if you get to the park early in the morning, you don't certainly have it to yourself, but it's not incredibly crowded with bus puke until, I don't know, 10 o'clock or so. And we have a guided tour of the temples that's really pretty special.
Oh, so you've arranged the tour of the area. That's on. If you choose, that's on the tour itself.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, now I'm looking at the picture of the Ragusa. That looks pretty wild, especially when you see pictures of it at kind of sundown or sunup, whichever it be. But kind of up on that hilltop and everything.
It is. Yep. Ragusa is a busy place. It's not a terribly big city. Everybody's packed up on top of that hilltop. It's not a place, if you don't like stairs, to go have a walk.
No, it doesn't look like it. Drink at a bar at the top of the stairs so you can stumble down.
Yeah, exactly.
It looks pretty. It looks really wild. How is it? So the hotel is right in the city?
Yep. So that we can go out and walk after dinner or in the morning and actually see the old section of town from the hotel.
How is it for the van driver? Does he love it or hate it?
Well, we've had a variety of different van drivers over the years, and those van drivers come to us with a variety of different skills and abilities. And
you're really prefacing this answer.
There are some who come in and say, wow, and there are some that actually simply call me on the phone and say, drive up here, would you? Come down and get the van and drive it up.
Get the van. I'm going home. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
So, well, it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Now, off those places, speaking from experience, off those places, they're certainly intimidating to drive in to, and you think, exactly, you just have visions of what the heck am I going to do? But they're usually set up for it. You're certainly not the first person to drive a van full of luggage in there, and they deal with it. And what I always love about those places too is that you can park your van, your car, whatever, in the middle of the street, block all traffic, and usually nobody will people horn or anything because they know this is a necessity. The only way to get luggage from this van into this hotel is I have to park in this spot, and you're going to have to wait. That's just the way it is, and they know, they're all good with it.
Exactly. Well, they're a whole lot less stressed there than we are here.
It's that sweet wine.
Well, in Ragusa, we're well away from the sweet wine. Now we're back into the good reds.
So, yeah, it definitely looks like a defendable position if that's what I imagine that's what they were
exactly.
For.
That was the point. And there's a castle up top and quite a cathedral. It's a neat town. It really is. Very impressive. And from there, we've got some good riding all the way up to Taormina. And Taormina is just a little bit north of Mount Etna, an active stratovolcano, a very significant volcano. Mm-hmm. I've been around volcanoes in New Zealand, briefly in Hawaii, not extensively at all, but in New Zealand, I've poked around a few of them here and there. And Etna is fascinating to me. It's a place that is particularly, I suppose, interesting in our current COVID situation because it was sitting up on the side of Etna, and I was thinking about how tentative our hold on life can be. If you live there, you're just hoping the volcano doesn't blow up. I mean, it doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, it's going to kill 10 or 15 or 20,000 people when it really seriously explodes because there's a significant population up the East Coast. And the volcano is there spewing regularly and routinely. And it's all as you're sitting up on top of or on the edge of it and looking around, you think, yeah, well, there is something to say there's a bit of luck to life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Didn't blow up when I was here. That was lucky.
It's like living in Tornado Valley in Kansas.
Yeah, a bit. So very, very impressive volcano. You can see it actually almost from Palermo. If you're up high in the hills behind Palermo and it's a clear day, you can probably see it 100 miles away. And now when we're in Taormina, we're 20 miles away. So we've got a free day there. The town itself is lovely. They've got a lovely little harbor and a bathing beach down, beautiful little beach down on the shoreline. And the ride up around the volcano is super impressive. It's a neat place to have a double overnight.
So pack my Speedo, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the water's clear. It's lovely. And again, we're there before all the tourists are. So the beaches are relatively empty. The only people that are on the beaches are a few locals here and there walking around with their parkas on because it's not 100 degrees.
Yeah. Well, especially if you live down there, you'd be so accustomed to the heat that 80-degree day is like, whatever.
Yeah, an 80-degree day is chilly. From there, we're back onto the Italian mainland and on the toe of the boot. When we depart there's a very short ferry trip, and we head up through Calabria to Stilo and then to Rosano. And those are two towns that are largely agricultural. There's not a whole lot going on in either one of them. The area around is relatively poor, but there is a nice network of roads and some good riding up to Rosano. Really good riding, actually. I really like Calabria, a place that's notable for the forests and the roads, and that's basically the extent of it. The little bit of agriculture that's going on there currently is mostly pasture animals.
It looks fairly mountainous there, or I don't know if mountainous is the right term, but looks like there's some fairly good grades. Is that right?
Yep, and the roads are very, very twisty. It's good riding.
Yeah. Well, one usually gets you the other one.
Yep. And again, no traffic when you're up there. There's just nobody around.
Yeah, the roads, just looking at some of these roads, they just look they look pretty fun.
Yep, they are. From Rosano, we've got another great day's ride up to Matera. And Matera is, as so many of the other places we're going on this tour, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it is that because there are a variety of caves, or sassi, S-A-S-S-I, where people have been living for some 20,000 years. There's a very, very soft sandstone, and the inhabitants of Matera actually carved their homes out of the sandstone. And they live in caves, or lived in caves. And it's known within Italy because as late as the 50s, the people that were living there were incredibly dirt poor. And there was a very
not a pun. They're dirt poor. They're living in a sandstone house.
Yeah, well, there's no dirt. It's all rock. It's all stone, actually. But anyway, there was a very well-known journalist who was traveling around there, and some little kids were on the street begging. But what they were begging for were malaria pills, because apparently they had big problems as they were keeping their stock in the caves with them and having issues with malaria flaring up, and there was no social services to take care of them. So he publicized that particular fact and that particular encounter, and the government took action, and they actually moved everybody out. They came in and forced the 20-some thousand people who were living in caves there to move to newly built apartments and homes up north of there. And then it was much later in the 19th century and 20th century, actually, to be fair, that the caves sort of took on an interest to the tourists. They're now being renovated for not only homes, but hotels, etc. So when we stay there, we're actually staying in the Sassi. We're staying in a cave.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody gets their own cave room. The group of people that are actually doing that are the same folk that are running the hotel that we stay at in Santo Stefano on top of the hill in the ancient village. I don't know. Have you been up there?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. Basically, you're trying to repurpose the old homes for tourist accommodation, and they've done so, interestingly, to make them comfortable, but without changing them fundamentally. So it's a neat place. It's a really neat place to stay, and it's a very historical place. From there, we're headed back to the west coast of the boot of Italy in Positano, and Positano sits on the Amalfi Coast. And everybody in the world,
famous Amalfi Coast.
the famous Amalfi Coast. Everybody in the world has heard of it. It's a stunningly beautiful little chunk of land, some stunningly beautiful towns and cities, or towns on it, not cities. And we've got a double overnight there. We've got the possibility on the free day to take a boat trip, to hang out on the beach, to head up to Naples and visit Herculean or Pompeii, if you're interested. Those are just north of where we're staying in Positano. So there's a lot to do around there. And then after our double overnight, we're heading from there up to Sperlonga. Sperlonga is a place that Gretchen and I sort of discovered last year, I think, when we were riding around south of Rome. And I went to check it out because I had heard of the place through a book called The Labor and the Wounds, a personal chronicle of one man's fight for freedom, which is a book written by Massimo Salvadori, Clement Salvadori's father, who was very actively involved in the Italian resistance. And he spent time when he was in the resistance in Sperlonga. So I went to check it out and discovered it's really a neat little beachside town and some great riding in and out of there. And in addition to that, there is a Villa of Tiberius, which are ancient ruins of grottos, seaside grottos from the Roman times that are still somewhat intact, and another neat place to visit. And then from there, bang, we're back to Rome, and it's over.
Again, I'm just looking at pictures of the Sperlonga, and it looks pretty amazing. Another one of these European or Italian towns just built almost seemingly in an impossible place. Like who in their right mind would build an entire city in this spot? Like, whoa, I can't imagine the work involved in doing that, but it looks pretty amazing for sure.
And the road into there is a favorite for the local cafe racers.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, it's a great cafe road into Sperlonga. Nice riding all the way back to Rome until we get on to the loop road around Rome. It's still quite interesting all the way. It's a great tour. It's really a great tour.
So how many days is that?
2 weeks total, 14 overnights. You know, it's a tour that you're not going to want to take 6 or 7 times. It's a tour that you definitely want to take in the springtime versus the fall because of the scenery. It's a place that you certainly won't regret going to at all because the history is incredible and the roads are just good. It's just different. It's very different. It's hilly all the way. There's no grinding down the highway anywhere unless you happen to want to do that on the way back to Rome. That's the one place where you could get on the highway and boogie along if you were so inclined.
Yeah, go spend your €20 and blast back for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's certainly a tour Bonnie and I have talked about going on. It looks really interesting. And a part of the world I haven't been. I see what you mean in that, not necessarily one you want to go to 5 times because there's you're riding in, there's not a ton of options. It's certainly enough for a tour or 2, but if you were to go back there 4 times, it's like, yeah, I've kind of hit that, done that, as opposed to a lot of other places where there's way more options available.
The dynamics of it are different. It's a different place. Sicily is a very popular location or a very popular destination for tourists going to Italy, but they're not out in the countryside for the most part. They're going to Palermo, they're going around to Taormina, they're going to Ragusa, but they're doing that all around the coast. So, and even the coast road is not busy in comparison to Central European roads. You know, it's the main road, but it's not backed up, and at least not when we're there. We're there early in the springtime, and the beaches aren't really open for bathing yet for people that are used to 100-degree temperatures. It's too cold.
The water will still be cooler.
Not by our standards, not by yours and my standards. No, you'll dive right in and think this is wonderful.
Compared to Lake Superior, well, yeah.
No, it's a whole lot warmer than Lake Superior. No, it's absolutely swimmable.
Yeah, right, and that's what I love about some of the tours you have that are coastal like that, especially at the end of a hot day. I'm not a huge swimmer, but something about the Mediterranean Sea at the end of the day just looks so inviting. The clear crystal blue water. I'll often jump in, just
Hmm.
if nothing else to say I did. Say, hey, I swam there, man.
And it's not super salty. The salt content is not overwhelmingly high, so you're not all when you get out. It's
That's funny if they have salt, if they're doing salts through evaporation in the fields. It's kind of funny if the water's not that salty.
no, but they have a whole lot of sun,
Yeah. Yeah.
sun and wind, and that's what it makes the evaporation work.
Mm-hmm. So
Yes.
do you see much from World War II around Sardinia?
No, not really.
Because was it U.S. Did they not enter in through Sardinia or not? Sorry, Sardinia, Sicily. That's Sardinia in my mind. Did the Allied fighters not come in to Sicily?
So the Allies landed in Sicily, and they moved up to basically Cassino. And Monte Cassino was where the Germans had their first serious fortification. And there was a hellacious battle for many, many days in Cassino, trying to take the monastery up on top of Monte Cassino. And that is quite close to Sperlongo. When we're going up from Positano to Sperlongo, Cassino is just a little bit west of Sperlonga. And there is time to go there. There is time to go up and visit the monastery. Running from the southwest to the northeast through Cassino, basically, was the first layer of German fortification. The next one was up by Florence.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
as it gets more and more mountainous, up there's steeper cliffs and everything.
Yep. But once the Allies got to Cassino, that's when the real fighting started. They had a hell of a time and a lot of casualties on both sides for the battle for Monte Cassino. And then they made it to Rome, and then again were up against the Germans when they got to Florence. And then from there, it was mostly a romp through the Alps to get into Germany. It was chasing a bunch of people who turned around and were running away.
Saw the writing on the wall, maybe, or
right.
or
So the stories of soldiers walking up through that along the boot all the way up to Cassino, that's all real. That happened, but there was not a lot of fighting going on at that point. The Allies were coming in and bombing some of the cities and bombing some of the German installations. But until they got to Cassino, there was no serious line of defense.
Yeah, as opposed to in a lot of the different areas farther up north in Austria, and that you still see the bunkers.
But a lot of those bunkers that you were looking at are not from the Second World War. They were First World War.
Yeah, and I was thinking even after that, maybe there's a place like Slovenia and stuff where they're newer. They're still, I don't know when they would have put them in, but
well, there's stuff now from the Cold War up on the Slovenian-Austrian border. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of different installations that you can visit that were Cold War bunkers. Yep. So that is the Sicilian Sojourn. It's a great and different ride through lovely areas. I am going to twist Clement Salvadori's arm a little bit because he's never been there, and that's one place that he would really like to go. So I'm going to twist his arm and see if we can get him to join us there next year.
I do like those ferry rides, overnight ferries. I think they're a great way to go. First time I was on one, I was quite surprised by how big the cabin was. I was not expecting that nice of accommodation for something we'd be on for such a short time, but it was really nice.
Well, we do get the best level of accommodation that are available on whatever ferry we're taking.
Yeah, for sure. But just, your thought in mind.
Yeah, Gretchen wants to know how you got a good room.
I just mentioned my name.
He just said he was with the beaches. That's it.
Yeah. They saw my passport, Canadian.
Oh, yep. There you go. There you go.
No, I was quite surprised. I don't know what I was expecting, but you're thinking, well, it's a ferry. Like, how nice is this going to be? But I just thought the bathroom would be a lot smaller. I'm picturing something like we used to have a 17-foot camping trailer, and the shower was the bathroom area. It was quite tiny. I was kind of picturing something like that because that would be fine. We're going to use this thing once. Who cares? But
right.
No, it was pretty decent. Yeah.
Yep. It's not uncomfortable. Not at all.
No, for sure.
Yeah. Well, there are pretty good sized ships that are taking us there. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just for the odd person might be they don't know what to expect on one of these things. No, they're pretty comfortable. They're big ships. They handle the water, and they're really impressive. I really like the overnight ferry. What's nice about it is that instead of wasting riding time, you can ride during the day, and then you go to the port, load your bike and yourself, of course, and you're traveling at night, wake up the next morning, and you're in your new spot, and away you go again.
Exactly. And the first couple of days on this particular tour move along easy enough that it's not a negative for us to be doing that, because even if jet lag is beating you up pretty badly, there's plenty of time to get to the ferry on the first day. You know, it's not in the way, and it's not something that's overwhelmingly demanding.
Okay, that tour sounds amazing. Like many of the tours we do, or I'm really going to have to hit that one of these times. So thanks for bringing us through that, the itinerary and everything. I can imagine in my brain right now as I'm sipping my wine. So,
yeah, it's a good one. You'd enjoy it. You absolutely would enjoy it.
So lightning round. We always got to do a lightning round.
I think that's a great idea. I'm feeling sparky.
Oh, I hope Sparky doesn't mind. So, favorite overnight location on tour?
Taormina.
Lasagna or spaghetti?
Spaghetti.
Favorite day of riding on tour?
When we're up through Calabria, between Stilo and Rosano.
Least favorite day of riding on tour?
Probably the day from Matera to Positano, because there's a bit of traffic, and the Amalfi Road is impressive, but boy, are there a lot of tourists on it.
Favorite Sicilian food?
Seafood.
What is a typical Sicilian food?
Great calamari.
I was going to say calamari or mussels.
Mussels, yeah.
Probably a lot of mussels.
Yeah, not as many. No, a lot of oysters and clams.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Mountains or ocean?
Ooh, mountains near the ocean where I can get great views.
I like it. Most interesting sightseeing stop?
Oh, there are so many on this tour. That's a tough one. That really is tough. The Valley of the Temples is fantastic. Ragusa is lovely. Matera is interesting. There are 2 or 3 or 4 that are really on par with one another there. But it is really the towns, the settlements, the Ragusa and Matera, I think would be the 2 that stick in my mind the most. Just
for people listening, most people, when you ask these questions, they say one word or 2. Anyways, Rossi or Quattraro?
Quattraro, how about that? I didn't think I'd say that, but there it is.
Sicily or Sardinia?
Sicily, in the spring.
Okay. Well,
3 words.
It's better. You're getting the hang of this. Okay. Well, this has been fun. I want to go on the tour even more than I did before.
Good. That's the idea. I assure you, you'll enjoy it. It's a unique and interesting experience. Plus, it's a land of the mafia, and yes, they're still there.
Yeah, right on. So I think that's our plan, is to do more of these, kind of explain some of the tours. A lot of people have asked for that. So we'll mix some of these in here as we can. And remember to subscribe. Once again, maybe I can get a liquor sponsor because
it's getting expensive.
Wine doesn't grow on trees, it grows on vines.